Okay, everybody, welcome back to Macherie's Classroom. This will be episode 3, and this is going to be a look at a character I've used a ton in Guild Wars, a ton in PvE, and even some in manual PvP, and that is Adelard, the jamming thrust master himself. So, first I want to talk about Adelard's skill set. Allows him to do 3 things in a fight, and right now I'm talking about auto PvP. And for the most part during this video, I'm going to be talking about auto PvP. And when I'm not, I'll let you know. But Adelard's AI works in a unique way, and I think it makes him really good. And so the first thing Adelard's going to do in a fight is he's going to support your team until he's in DPS range. This means he will start every fight by casting things like Protect or Shell or whatever skill you have him have learned. And he will use that to start each fight until he's in range to do some DPS. When he gets in range to do DPS, he will prioritize his highest damage move, because that's how the AI works in this game. That's going to mean him staying at range and using jamming thrust most of the time, the move that has become a meme at this point. But if he can get into range to hit 2 people with like Fyra, he will do that. So whichever he can do to maximize damage, he will do. So if you're playing Adelard and you want him to do jamming thrust a lot and stay at range, you can wait till the skill on-off that comes later this month, or you can simply not level Fyra and it won't do as much damage, and he will prioritize using jamming thrust instead because it hurts more. Then he will heal. Adelard has healing spells. It's an important part of his kit, and it's a big reason to play him. And if you are in a pinch, if your characters are very low health, I've seen his AI kick into healing mode and start healing, but mostly what this is really good for is at the beginning of a fight, like say it's Guild Wars and it's your second fight and you have people that are low health, Adelard will top them off before they go back into the fight, and that's really useful. So if you're in a pinch, if your characters are low, Adelard will heal them. So he fills 3 roles. He's a support early, especially in your first fight in Guild Wars with Protect and Shell. He's a DPS when he's in range, and if your characters get low, he'll heal them. Okay. Moving on, let's look at Adelard's stats. Now, if we look at this top row here, this is one of the reasons why people disregard Adelard a lot. This first row, just his base stats, are not really high. And a lot of people look at this and they're like, yeah, move 3, jump 2, only 313 magic, low-ish HP. I'm just going to pass on this character. And I think that's a mistake, because these stats are just nothing special. They're not terrible, they're not great. Where his stats shine is down here, right? Like, these things in this circle here are what make Adelard an above average to really good character, in my opinion. His resists to damage types are extremely high, especially against slashing damage right here, which is the most prevalent damage type in the game. And then missile damage is incredibly high, and that's the second most prevalent damage type in the game. His piercing damage resistance is very high too, and that will become more and more of a thing as more meta piercing characters come out. But you can, for now, don't worry about this one too much. He is weak to fist damage, right? But you never see that in Guild Wars. And he's a little bit weak to magic resist. However, he has 2 passives that we're going to talk about in a minute that will buff this and make him more viable in even a magic comp. So we're going to come back to a lot of these things later, but because of his resists here, he fits into very specific team comps incredibly well. Okay, let's look at the rest of his skills before we move on. His support skills. One of them on here is a trap that I want to mention, and that's Emerald Echo, and I fell into this trap early too. I was thinking, oh, this is really cool. He'll cast Protect, and instead of lasting for 3 turns, it'll last 4. I don't know if that's how that spell is supposed to work, but it does not work like that right now. I would stay away from this until we get some kind of confirmation from Gumi that it is now working with White Mage spells, but right now it does not work for anything but his Red Mage spells, Green Mage spells, which is basically just, he has an agility buff that he can cast if you're running Green Mage, but you're probably never going to be doing that. So stay away from this. Nullify Doom, this isn't super good. Mage's Protection and Savior's Protection are the two I really want to talk about. If you look here, these two give a combined total of 27 magic resists. So if we go back a slide, that can take his -10 magic resist up to a +17, and he will fill a supporting role in a magic fighting comp very well, running those two support skills. If you are not fighting a magic team, I would use AP up. That's never terrible. And then maybe just one of these two, probably Savior's Protection, just in case you run into a Sid who hits you with, Crush Armor or something like that. Okay, his counter spells, not one of his strengths. His counter skills aren't super great. If you are fighting a magic team, Magic Reflex is super good, but that's pretty situational. Dispel counter's pretty awful. And then Regenerator is probably the one you're going to run most of the time, and that will just give himself a regen 20% of the time when he's hit. That's not terrible, but it's not great. So Magic Reflex and Regenerator are the two viable ones here. Run Magic Reflex if you plan on fighting magic teams. Okay, moving on. Let's look at his main job first. He has two very, very important damaging skills in his main job, and then some support skills. So I have circled here Fira and Jamming Thrust. Jamming Thrust is, in my opinion, his best damaging move. It has this added benefit of canceling ability activation. So like if you Jamming Thrust a Medina who is channeling Blizzaga, it'll cancel the channel. Super good in manual PvP where you can use this to, mess with other people, but it will also happen sometimes in auto PvP just kind of by accident. And it's got to feel bad for the other team when their Medina's channeling Flare to one-shot your Engelbert, and Adelard's like, poke! And he pokes her, and it cancels it. Okay, Fira is the other one. It doesn't have the same kind of range as Jamming Thrust, but it does hit in the cross shape, and it does good damage. And like I said, if you level this, he will use it when he, when he is in range to hit two people. It won't out-damage Jamming Thrust, because Jamming Thrust has 200% damage, and this only has 141% damage. So this will always do more against a single target, but he will prioritize this if he can hit two targets. It costs less, which is nice, but really AP is not a huge problem for Adelard. So those are your two ones, right? He doesn't use Fast Cast. The AI doesn't like to use this. And the AI will use Cura if you haven't learned, if you're not running a build with Curaga in it. But we're going to talk about his curing and stuff in a second. Okay, if you see Macherie down here, she's pointing at Asuna for a specific reason. Red Mage, you're never going to really want to run... Here, let's look at... spoiler alert. Asuna is a spell that is very useful for the tower, right? And certain PvE content. And Adelard was very, very useful in the tower, especially, I think it was floor 15, where the mages in that floor cast Toad, right? And they'll Toad your guys, and you have to be able to cure that, or you literally just have frogs doing their frog hop move, and you can risk losing that floor of the tower. So, you're never going to really run Red Mage Sub, except note that it has Asuna in it, and that's maybe the only time it's going to be useful. Okay, what I want to talk about here is something with the JP, the people in this can make this game, they love to do this weird, love thing with brothers and sisters sometimes in anime, and Adelard and Salir are, they definitely fall into that anime trope, and so I like to make fun of him in my videos for doing those things. But yeah, so if you like Adelard, you got to deal with the fact that the dude is in love with his sister and she's in love with him, and you got to be able to overcome that weird little interaction. Anyway, moving on. Let's look at Green Mage real fast. Again, I don't think you're going to run Green Mage very much. It is the spells that can be buffed by Emerald Echo, but are you really wanting to increase fire resist very often? Probably not. Ruin's a good spell, but it's not better than his main job spells. 25% agility buff could be nice, but again, I feel like there's other things that are better. Maybe in some PvE content you would want D-Protect for some, if Adelard was your only choice for that. And then he can Imperil, which is good. It decreases all elemental resistance by 25%, but again, for PvE. So maybe look to Green Mage for PvE if you need it. Okay, White Mage. Now, remember we were pointing at Asuna earlier in Red Mage, and I was like, you'd never really run this except for Asuna? Well, he has it in White Mage too. So, never run Red Mage. I think that's the message here. Asuna is a really good spell for PvE. Now, the big thing about White Mage that is PvP focused is Protect, Shell, and Curaga. Obviously, Curaga, best curing spell in the game aside from like Ayaka's Limit Break. He will use this on low health characters, or he will use it at the beginning of your second fight in Guild Wars. Even without raising his magic stat. Like, Adelard is not a very selfish character. He doesn't need to boost his own stats a lot to have Curaga hitting for something like 1.5k to 2,000, which is really, really good, considering you're not building a magic team. Okay, Protect and Shell. This is where you got to get a little bit tricky with Adelard until we have ability turn on and off. Right now, my Adelard does not know Shell, because I don't want him casting that at the beginning of a fight. I want him casting Protect. Because I haven't learned Shell, Adelard starts off every single fight that I have him in by casting Protect on everybody he can until he can start jamming thrusting. He will prioritize your tank, or he will prioritize, let me put that more correctly, he will prioritize the person on your team with the most hate. So if someone is running Vow of Love, he will cast Protect on them, and that really synergizes super good. This makes Adelard a tier higher than maybe most people would have him in my case. He doesn't know Regen, so you don't have to worry about learning Regen and having him just run around being like, Regen, oh, hooray, we're all full health and we have Regen. He'll cast Protect, and that's such a good spell. Now, once ability on-off comes in, and you maybe want to run Adelard in anti-magic comps, learn Shell, and then just turn them on and off according to how you want to use them. But those are his 4 main spells in this thing. He has Raise, which will raise a character with 20% of their HP. It's not as good as Full Life, obviously, and so and he doesn't like to use it. All right, moving on. Let's talk about actual teams with Adelard in them. So I put 3 examples of Adelard team ideas on the board. One thing that I think is super good about Adelard is how flexible he is. He fills a support role on your team while also doing damage, and because of his resist, he is allowed to exist in so many different team comps. So the top example here, this would be an anti-missile team, right? So you take Adelard, you would give him some gear, augment him in some way to be more missile resistant, because this is the team that probably has the best chance of targeting him early in a fight. So maybe use a platinum robe, boost his missile resist in some way, and then run him with other people who are missile resistant. And if you're hunting down missile teams like Frederica or Lucia, he will fit super well in this comp. And this is the one I used him in most often. But he's not limited to that. Let's look down here. Here we're looking at Adelard into a slashing team or an evasion team. Okay, so you would want to have him, obviously, augment here his accuracy or some elemental resists. Or basically, Alexandrite Ring's really good. Alexandrite Ring is super necessary if you're ever fighting teams that run evasion. And Adelard is a good character to run an Alexandrite Ring on because you want to put a weapon in his TMR slot a lot. And we're going to talk about items here in a second. But Alexandrite Ring on him is so good for, jamming thrusting a Venera or something like that. Now you want to run him on this squad into these people with high slash resist characters. Again, I'm using my own teams as an example here, but Eileen and Engelbert, very slash resistant, so Adelard plus those 2 would be great against teams that are using Orlandu as their main damage source. This would also be a good team, or some combination of characters that are slash resist with high accuracy and luck would be good at fighting evade teams with Venera, Shadowlynx, Ketone, stuff like that. So the last one here that I want to talk about is anti-magic teams. With Killfay coming out next week, magic teams are going to start showing up a lot more than they are now. So with Adelard, you just swap in his passives to Savior's Protection and Mage's Protection. Now he's a magic resistant character. Pair him with other magic resistance characters like a tank and another DPS, and then find magic teams and kill them. So if you are thinking to yourself, ooh, I need to invest in a healer or a support because I want to run teams with a support on them, Adelard is a great unit to invest into because he's good into almost any other composition. He's not going to solo carry, right? Like, Jamming Thrust is not going to solo carry a fight, but you're not looking for your support to solo carry. You just want him to cast support spells, which he will do. You want him to heal, which he will do. And he adds some damage on top of that that is more reliable right now than Ayaka's damage. Because Ayaka will prioritize healing and buffing over damage all the time. There's certain scenarios where she can one-shot people with a comet if they're weak to her, that she'll do that. But Adelard will do damage. So he's good with all these comps. Let's look on. Okay, weapons. I mentioned a second ago that you're wanting to use TMR weapons on Adelard to free up a armor slot and an accessory slot. Adelard's best weapon is his own TMR. It gives magic up. Adelard does not scale with slashing attack up, even though he uses a sword. So a +5 Nagnarok, for example, you're wasting that slash up on him. He gets nothing from it. I would rather him wear armor, an Alexandrite ring, or maybe a different ring, or some other accessory that comes out later, and then use his TMR. If you don't have his TMR yet, you might have Gafgarion's TMR, which isn't necessarily great for him, but it does free up that slot. Or maybe like a Nagnarok magic with that's not maybe plussed up a bunch. Just take a recipe, level it into magic, and he'll get bonuses from that magic stat. But his TMR gives magic attack, magic up, right? Like what Ramuh's vision card does. It's best on him. Okay, Espers. With Espers, Adelard is super flexible. There's two ways I like to build him. One is focus on speed and getting his magic stat up. So my example here for those is Shiva and Siren, who have a lot of agility on their cards and raise magic a respectable amount. That'll help his heals, it'll help his damage, and it'll help him get more turns in so he can cast more protects early and then be a better support late. The other option is you can put defensive Espers on him. So I have Golem on here, but the new one, Death Machine, be an option. The problem with these is they're slower, so you're going to maybe only get 2 protects out before he starts damaging instead of 3, or your other characters might outpace him, but you can build him to sustain a lot of hits. And so defensive Espers are a good option too. You'll want to pair the one, like if you're building an anti-slash team and you aren't using Siren on one of your other characters for some reason, maybe go that route. Or if you're building an anti-slash team and using the Platinum Robe to raise his defensive stat, maybe a defensive stat Esper would be a good option there. But he's very flexible. He's essentially the character in your squad that can use the thing you don't need the other characters to use. He's not very greedy as far as needing stats himself, which I really like about him. Speaking of that, let's look at vision cards. Okay. In my opinion, you want Adelard to be the guy on your team who's running the card that that gives the stat to the rest of your team that they need so they can run their best vision card. I think a great example of this that some people might sleep on is Ifrit, right? Because Ifrit gives fire attack up, which is not for his personal ability, which a lot of characters, there's not a lot of fire attack characters out there, and it doesn't help them. That will help Adelard's damage. And it gives the whole rest of your squad a big boost to their attack. And so if you're not running Vow, let's say you have Warrior of Light. A lot of people just got Warrior of Light. He doesn't need to run Vow of Love. You might need some other way of finding that attack up. Adelard carrying Ifrit might be a good option for you there. Alternatively, he can run stats that help you mitigate with the rest of your characters. If you're running an anti-missile team, you could have him use Shadowlink's vision card here, which will give a missile resist up to your whole group. And he doesn't really care about the stats that it gives him personally because he doesn't necessarily need them. You just want him buffing the rest of your group with his vision card buff. Iron Giant here would be the same thing for a slash resistant team. You can be like, hey, Adelard, here you go. Please buff the rest of the team with this. Cool. One I wanted to highlight right now specifically is Venera comps are starting to show up. Evade comps are really starting to power up as people get Shiva leveled up more, as they get their Veneras leveled up. You don't want to leave. You don't want to fight a team like that has a lot higher luck than you. You need to try and balance your luck out with their luck. Adelard can carry, like this one for example, this card for example, New Life, that will give him some HP up, and it will give your team luck up. This will help you hit evasion teams so much better. Just an Alexandrite ring is no longer enough against high-level evade teams. And we've been finding that out in Guild Wars recently, and it's hurt us. So I guess that's what I'm saying with Adelard. He's really flexible. Have him carry the buff for your team if you don't have a card you want to give him. If your team just doesn't need him to carry something else, and you do want to boost his stats, boost his magic stat or his speed. Look for a way to boost his agility or boost his magic stat, yeah, that's right, magic stat. It'll help him heal. It'll help him attack better. Yeah, and there you go. Okay. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, please give me a like and subscribe. Also, I am now streaming. I'm going to stream most days right around the beginning of Guild Wars time. Stop by twitch.tv/OrangeJ. Say hi, hang out with us for a while. If you want to theory craft anything on stream, very willing to do that. Ask questions, whatever. We will see you there. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.